going on, everybody? Happy Monday. Welcome to another edition of Mean Streets presented by So Rare, live here on Game Plus Network, also on our FTN Network YouTube page, iTunes, and Spotify. Mean Streets also available for you to listen to. We got Todd Whitestone in the house every single Monday. We're going to talk with Todd. We're winding down when it comes to the fantasy baseball season. I want to have more of an MLB talk with him. Trade deadline is tomorrow at 6 p.m. Eastern. We've seen a couple trades over the weekend, in particular, the Texas Rangers getting a couple arms inside the rotation. They're starting to falter a little bit. I know they had a big series with the I almost called them the Texans, Houston. And that was an unbelievable series. There's a lot of drama there, but you can see Houston now starting to get in the groove of the Astros. They're getting some guys healthy now, and they're inching a little bit closer to overtaking the AL West. Texas struggling a little bit, but they did pick up some arms. So I want to talk to Todd about those arms. What else can we expect? John Smoltz, I saw him last night. I mean, I heard him say this on when the Orioles last night taking care of the Yankees on Sunday Night Baseball, said he had watched Baltimore 10 straight games and he thought that they were legitimate World Series contenders. I don't know if MLB Dream thinks that. I don't know if Todd thinks that. I don't know even myself if I actually believe that they are World Series contenders at this moment, but they are here and they're playing really good baseball. And when we showed the World Series odds via DraftKings, they are buried down the list for a team that is in a good spot at the moment. I understand the AL East is very powerful, and most teams near the bottom of that division would be near the top of other divisions, but there's only going to be three potentially that make it from that division. Maybe it's just one, but I think we'll see three. Tampa seems locked in, even though they're struggling as well. We'll talk with Todd. We'll also hit up some fantasy baseball stuff for those that are making the push, because tomorrow is August 1st. There's only a couple weeks left before fantasy baseball head-to-head playoffs. I know I have a couple. One of my leagues starts really early. Shout out to Joe Pisapia. We're in the middle of it right now in the first round of fantasy baseball playoffs. I like his thinking. September is a bit of a crapshoot with, prospects being called up, teams out of it, caps on certain players. And then it really is football season come September. So he wants it down a little bit earlier, but I know people in rotisserie leagues, high stakes leagues, it's going to be all the way until the end. So we're going to be here to help you out. Todd's hanging by in just a little bit. A lot of NFL news to get to here on this show, a ton really. From the last time we chatted, we didn't even get to talk about Joe Burrow with the calf injury. Both Seattle running backs are dealing with injuries right now. Kenneth Walker week to week with a groin injury. Zach Charbonnet is out indefinitely with a shoulder injury. Jonathan Taylor is in the news requesting a trade. Jamarce with just ludicrous comments. I can't even this guy when he talks, I just can't even listen to him talk. He drives me nuts. And then Aaron Rodgers, who has drove me nuts for years, actually like his comments, and we'll get into them because Sean Payton was ripping Nathaniel Hackett. We talked about it last week, but Rodgers spoke out on it as well. There have been some injuries, of course, in the NFL. We'll hit up on all those news items in just a little bit. Round 11 of NFFC high-stakes leagues. I want to show you the ADP of those drafts over the last 2 weeks, a large sample size. Now it really is draft season. Will be in New York with Jake Seeley for his Flex Leagues this Saturday, and we'll be together live doing the Sirius XM Fantasy Sports Radio Show. FNT. George, give me some bats for that. I need some bats. He's hanging out. FTN Fantasy Show every Saturday morning. It will be Jake and I together in New York, and we will be going over our live draft that we will take part in. Jake's doing a few drafts there. He's going to have an auction, I do believe. He's going to have a super flex. We're in it together in the flex draft. He's picking in the 7th spot. I'm in the 8, and EY's in the 9th. So it should be pretty fun to be paired up next to those two gentlemen. So we'll be doing the live show together. Channel 87 Sirius XM Fantasy Sports Radio. Jordan Allen, Daily Handle. Love this guy. Shocking. Smoltz thinks the O's are World Series contenders. Point emoji. We'll talk about it with Todd in just a little bit, Daily Handle. But, it's probably Houston. Again, it's always Houston, but something feels different with the Astros this year. It's mostly their rotation, I think, but they'll probably add a name or two. We're going to break. We got some MLB picks and props for you a little bit later on in the show as well. A lot to get to here on this program. If you have any questions, any comments, you can leave them there. If you are watching on Game Plus and you have a fantasy football question, last week somebody reached out to me, Mean Streets, ftn@gmail.com, wanting to dive into a couple keeper league questions that they had. I'd love to answer those here on this show, but, I understand. You can't catch a live show. It's all good. You watch it on Game Plus, you can hop on over to our YouTube page, leave the comment there. I'm always circling back on these videos. the email there, meanstreetsftn@gmail.com, or at Chris Mead on the Twitter machine as well. And I know that a lot of leagues are ramping up to get their keeper, their keepers in, their deadlines are approaching, as well as just rookie only drafts and things like that. So a lot to get to. Did a athletic mock last week, Superflex. We'll talk about that this week as well, dive into it. It was a very different draft night. While people were really, I think 10 quarterbacks went in the first 25 picks, I didn't take one until the 4th round. So I'll show you how different of a team that will be a little bit later on in the week, because I know there's some Superflex stuff that people had as well. So we'll take a quick break here. Todd's in a few minutes, and we'll get into some NFL news and notes, items, and what it means from a fantasy football perspective. Are we bumping down Jamar Chase, T. Higgins? What are we doing those guys? What's going to happen in Seattle with these two running backs? I already had concerns with Kenneth Walker. Now he's dealing with a week-to-week groin injury here as the calendar flips to August tomorrow. So we'll talk about that and a whole lot more here on Main Street's Keeper Lock. We'll be back in a couple. Welcome back in. We'll try to get the latest here on Jonathan Taylor. There's I see Rappaport now on the broadcast behind me talking about the latest on Jonathan Taylor. We'll dive into that in a second. I do want to lead here in the second block with Joe Burrow. So unfortunately, we didn't have a live show on Friday. I had some stuff going on my end, but we did talk a lot on Thursday about the wide receivers and my rankings and my tiers, and we talked about Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, and Joe Burrow suffered what is a calf injury, not an Achilles. When I first saw the injury, I thought potentially it could be an Achilles injury. He already had his calf wrapped. It's not the same leg that he blew at his ACL, so that is positive news. I do wonder why he was out there with that calf already wrapped up, but reports out of Cincinnati and from my guy Paul Dehner Jr. from The Athletic, who covers the Bengals, that he's out several weeks. There's no timetable here for this injury. Not sure if he's going to be ready to go week 1. He's already moving down draft boards just for a couple of days. I mean, we're going to see that. We're going to see Jamar Chase probably maybe not be the average, pick 2 in drafts. Maybe he falls to, for me personally, if I was drafting today and they're all in the same tier when we brought them up, like Kupp and Chase and Tyreek Hill and Justin Jefferson are all in tier 1 for me. I mean, we're really splitting hairs with some of these guys. Thank you, George. I would keep Chase still in that first tier. I'm keeping T. Higgins in that third tier there. Nothing is changing for me here. Besides the fact, if I was drafting today, maybe I would just select Cooper Kupp instead of Jamar Chase. We're obviously splitting hairs with those 4 guys. I think they're all studs, and I think that they belong in a tier by themselves. But if you were to tell me that Joe Burrow had a setback, in a couple weeks, and he wasn't going to be ready until potentially week 4. Like, that would change things for me. I think that Jamar Chase could be fine. I think T. Higgins would be fine, but let's be honest about the quarterback play. If it's Trevor Siemian, we've been down that road before. It's not going to be the same sort of connection, but this sometimes does create a buying window for certain guys. Like, is T. Higgins now going to fall to, past Amari Cooper and DK Metcalf? If he does, like, I think that's a pretty good selection. Is he going to fall to the 5th round like T. Higgins? I don't think so. Like, I think he's still going to live in the 3rd round, maybe in the 4th round. Same sort of deal with Jamar Chase. If he's there at pick 5 or 6, like, I'm going to take this guy. Now, for the quarterbacks, I did move him down a little bit, but he's still in that same tier. That first tier has always stayed the same for me with Hurts and Mahomes and Allen. And then that second tier, Lamar up at the top of that tier with Burrow and Fields. And it was Burrow had more fantasy points per game than Fields last year. And I do expect Fields to take that uptick this year as a passer. He broke out last year as a fantasy football quarterback. He still only threw for like 2,000 yards. I see people talking about him being a breakout candidate this year in fantasy football, and I'm confused with that because he did break out last year. He's quarterback 6. Are we saying that he's going to be quarterback 1 overall? I mean, I don't think so, but I think he's going to break out as a passer. We have him projected for 3,100 passing yards, which would be roughly 1,000 more this year, bringing in the addition of DJ Moore, said multiple 1,000-yard seasons, a couple years removed from like 18 yards per reception. The guy is an alpha wide receiver 1. Don't let anybody tell you that he is not. He is going to improve Justin Fields' game, but now I am more willing to take Fields ahead of Joe Burrow. Burrow is still in that second tier, low-end tier for me, maybe a little bit closer now to Trevor Lawrence and Justin Herbert. It's all very close. They're all studs. Get yourself a top 8 quarterback. We'll move on. We'll keep tabs. We'll see what happens here in Cincinnati. Joe Mixon, it doesn't do anything for me there with Mixon. Maybe he gets more touches. He hasn't really been efficient over the past couple years. He's caught a lot of passes out of the backfield. No Samaje Perine. I think his role is going to stay true. He's going to be a borderline 20 opportunity running back per game linked to a top 5 offense. Maybe he just gets a couple more carries in week 1 or week 2 if there's no Joe Burrow. And it's not going to affect his contract. We've seen the guys get paid lately, from, well, I don't know if it was Hurts first, but, kind of got the ball rolling with Hurts. He was the highest paid quarterback for a minute, and then Lamar, and then Herbert here recently. And now we'll see Joe Burrow here pretty quickly. And this calf injury is not going to have anything to do with it. But it's been a rough go for Joe Burrow, hasn't it? Like from the MCL and the ACL to the broken pinky, I mean, his throat, and here we are now. I mean, this time last year, got his appendix removed, so he was away from the team as well. So it's been like a couple camps now in a row where he hasn't been with the squad. And I think that's the biggest thing where you don't need to move these guys around. It's the same offensive coordinator. It's the same. All the pieces are all the same, right? The 2 stud wideouts, Tyler Boyd, Joe Mixon, like everything is really the same. So like it's not going to matter like getting together and building chemistry. Everything is all good there. It's not all good in Deesh in the house. Yeah, I mean, maybe does. He just like hates playing preseason. We could segue into Aaron Rodgers for that because normally this guy doesn't like to be around in camps, but he is around in camps. We'll see that up here in a second, George. So for those that missed, Sean Payton, last week had some. I like Sean Payton being back in the NFL. I really do. I think that for one, he's a great coach, right? He really is a great play caller, one of the best that I've seen over the years, and he's not afraid to speak his mind. Right? You go back to the Eagles and the Saints in the playoffs, and Doug Peterson, and betting money on the line with these 2 guys going toe to toe, and he does speak freely. I don't really necessarily agree with some of the comments. I thought there were some low blows. I guess I do agree with the comments. Like, he wasn't wrong. It was a bloody mess last year in Denver. Like, I don't even really know what else to say. They were dead last in points per game. He talked about the pre-snap penalties on both sides of the ball. I think he was just, I'm trying to think in his head, he was basically saying, like, you guys are not that bad. Like, it was bad last year, right? But it's Russell Wilson, you're not that bad. Things are going to get better here. And Daily Handle says Aaron Rodgers was pissed at Peyton's comments about Hackett. Yeah, of course he was pissed. And we got what he said. Well, let's tee it up here, George. This is a sit down here. I believe it was from NFL Network. Let's play this here first. And this is what Rodgers was asked about the comments here. And he was really standing up for his guy, Nathaniel Hackett.
He's arguably my favorite coach I've ever had in the NFL. Just his approach to it, how he makes it fun, how he cares about the guys, just how he goes about his business with respect, with leadership, with honesty, with integrity. And it made me feel bad that someone who's accomplished a lot in the league is that insecure that they have to take another man down to set themselves up for some sort of easy fall if it doesn't go well for that team this year. Thought it was way out of line, inappropriate, and I think he needs to keep my coach's names out of his mouth.
I love that comment at the end. I'd say we were like Will Smith-esque, right? Keep my wife out out of your mouth. Keep it out there, right? Did you guys see the? Yeah, he does. Rodgers loves to hear himself talk. Did you guys see the Kevin Hart? Kevin Hart went at Kevin Hart, of course. I mean, all these comedians are going at Will Smith now. But you know what, Rodgers? It's good that he's kind of taken on this leadership role. I mean, he does like to hear himself talk. I'm with you, right? I mean, I'm not the biggest Rodgers fan, but it's right that I think for him to kind of step up and, you know, have his head coach or his offensive coordinator is back. I mean, all these guys are back together. They've been together in Green Bay. You got Alan Lazard, Randall Cobb. They're all back together as one unit. And it was a little bit of a low blow. And there's a couple things, a couple takeaways. I've heard some former players talk about this. I've heard former coaches that there's like a code that you don't really call out other coaches like this. And I think that's probably why Sean Payton backtracked just a touch. But I do like this leadership role here from Aaron Rodgers, like stepping up. It's a different vibe. It kind of feels a little bit like him talking a lot, and everything is surrounding around Rodgers again this time in a new jersey, but sticking up for his coach and for the human that Nathaniel Hackett is. And I'm sure Rodgers will tell you, and there's no camera, and that was Peter Schrager, by the way, from NFL Network interviewing him, and it's a lot longer, and it was a pretty good sit down. At first, Schrager was like, I don't want to sit here and ask you any comments or any questions about Sean Payton, but, and then he went into it there, as you heard. Sean Payton, again, was not wrong. And I'm really looking forward to when these two teams play. I believe it is week 5. These two teams are going to suit up in Denver. They're going to go toe-to-toe, and that should be fantastic. Rodgers' favorite coach of all time. Wow, that is a big statement. That is a big statement because he has been around some pretty significant coaches, right? Offensive coordinators and play callers and head coaches like that. So drama, and I'm here for it. But I have no issue with really what Sean Payton said. But I'm not in the NFL circle, so I can understand why other coaches and players would be ticked off with that. But again, he was not wrong at all. We got a question here in the house. Let's get to it right now. Hi, Chris. I know it's not nailed, but interested of your answer. He's in a 2 QB league. First round comes. Would you pick those quarterbacks over Jefferson, McCaffrey, or is it a coin toss? Yeah, that is really a phenomenal question. I want you to tune into tomorrow's show. I'm going to show you guys the draft board of a Superflex league over at The Athletic. I had picked 4, I believe, and I didn't go the quarterback way. I went Jamar Chase, which hopefully Burrow's fine. Jeff Ratcliffe will tell you, and I agree with a lot of things that Jeff Ratcliffe tells you, but I've been in kind of the same – I kind of have a very similar strategy when it comes to Jeff with Superflex leagues. Now, if I had picked 1 or 2, I may go Mahomes or Hurts or Allen. I may do those top 3. But I think, again, after those first 3, yeah, Jeff always says wait till 10. I've been in the same. I've been 10 to 12. I kind of feel the same way. While everybody kind of zigs with the quarterbacks, they want quarterbacks. And in that draft in particular, I believe, as I said in the opening block, there were 10 quarterbacks that went in the first, I want to say 25 picks. And it does create some value at other positions. I believe I started my draft with Jamar Chase. I think I went wide receiver, and I still ended up getting Travis Etienne as my first running back. I believe Devontae Adams was my 3rd wide receiver with Garrett Wilson and Jamar Chase. So maybe I could have went with a little bit more of a balanced attack, but I think while everybody is taking quarterbacks, you can have an edge at the running back position or the wide receiver position, and you can still be okay at the quarterback position. Don't punt it all together, but if you wait for the first 10 to go off the board, you can still get yourself a Daniel Jones, a Geno Smith, Kirk Cousins. You know, you could potentially roll the dice on a Tua. You could have an Aaron Rodgers. You still have some high upside quarterbacks. And I think with Jones, there's a rushing floor there, which is super nice. You can do Anthony Richardson. And then, you know, you can get in like Brock Purdy's a really good value at the moment. I think Derek Carr is a decent value at the moment. Even Matthew Stafford is your second quarterback. So I personally like to wait it out a little bit. Take the value that your league mates are giving you because they're all going to go quarterback. They're all going to draft 2 quarterbacks in the first 3 or 4 picks. Get yourself somebody that you feel is a top 12 quarterback, a low-end quarterback 1, maybe somebody that's living in that 12 to 15 range like last year with Fields and Trevor Lawrence that could jump up and be a top 10 quarterback. That guy is probably Anthony Richardson this season. Even if he's the worst passer in the history of passing, he could still finish as a top 10 quarterback. I mean, just look at Tim Tebow those years and Blake Bortles. Like there's a edge there with the rushing ability from those guys. So that's the way that I view it. A lot of people will tell you that they want to take a quarterback early. I personally would definitely lean with those wide receivers. I would probably take a top 3 quarterback over CMC. I'd probably take one of those guys in the first tier. But yeah, as you say with the comment, you're okay with Cousins, Rodgers, Goff later on. Yeah, get yourself a top 12 guy. Deshaun, Daniel Jones. I like Geno a lot more than other people like Geno. And then you can dive back in and get yourself somebody in that mid-range and then finish off with a third. I think it's certainly important. You want to have a third. If you really punt it, I think people are getting 4, but a third is nice. I would say Brock Purdy's a great third. I think Jordan Love is an interesting third. I also think that Tannehill towards the end of your draft is an interesting third quarterback, and maybe even CJ Stroud as well. But D said it, and something that we've been doing a lot on this show, right? Is George, do you have bloody nose there? To tell the whole crew, he's like, yep, bloody nose happening right now, randomly from George. You can see him there in the back. I was like, what is happening here? We always do this mocks. Last week we did a what was it, a hero RB or a 0 RB mock draft. Let's do a super flex this week. I'll show you the draft board. We'll do a super flex. We'll play through it, but I highly recommend that as well. Have some mocks and see what happens. Cause I guess every mock is different. When you do a mock draft, especially if you do it over at Sleeper, it really is going to be heavy quarterbacks. Like the quarterbacks are going to fly off the board. Maybe avoid it. See what kind of team you could build. You're really going to like your running backs and wide receivers compared to the rest of your league mates. And after the first 8, I mean, a lot of these quarterbacks are the same anyway. So I do see the advantage of getting yourself a top 8 one. There's one more news note that I wanted to bring up here. Actually, there's 2 more. We'll save the Seattle backs because we're going to dive into them from an NFL preview betting standpoint. But Jonathan Taylor, this is crazy. Jonathan Taylor demands a trade. Colts don't want to trade him. And there was a report late last night that Jonathan Taylor, again, it was this was from Mike Chappell. And Mike Chappell follows the Indianapolis Colts over at Fox 5-9 and CBS 4 Sports. And he had said the Colts considering placing Jonathan Taylor on non-football injury list, according to the report, that he suffered some type of back injury while working out at his own, like on his own time in Arizona, and he's still rehabbing from an ankle injury. And then you saw the graphic there that George just brought up, and I'm going to bring this up one more time for you because I didn't see it. Never had back pain. This was a tweet that he had last night. Never had back pain. 2, never reported back pain. Not sure who sources are, but find new ones. This is not what you want to see, right? This is not what you want to see. This is not what you want to hear from your running back and everything that's happened over the past couple of weeks with all these running backs, right? With the running back market and Saquon getting, I don't even want to say he got paid. He got $11 million, and Josh Jacobs wanting some money, and Tony Pollard getting franchise tagged here. Now Jonathan Taylor, and then Irsay saying that, if he died tomorrow, nobody would really remember Jonathan Taylor. I'm paraphrasing here, but he did say the died tomorrow thing. And I get again where he's coming from. It's don't be bigger than the organization. It's it's the Colts logo. It's the franchise here, but clearly they're not seeing eye to eye. And Jonathan Taylor is a really good running back. And I think they're going to want to have him in their backfield when they lean on Anthony Richardson, who is very, very raw, but not a great start to camp for some of these running backs, some of these injuries that we have seen. And I don't think the Colts are going to trade him. I'm looking right now, Jonathan Taylor is at camp. He's reported to camp. So I'm seeing a quote there from fans in the stands saying, don't leave us. And I'm sure he's not going to, but I am concerned about all this. I don't like to see it. Again, more reason to draft Nick Chubb early. I know a lot of people are in the Bijan camp, but Taylor and Jacobs, yes, I do skip them in drafts. I am not going to risk taking either of those guys in the first round of my drafts or in the early second with this kind of turmoil. I'm always a big believer that you can't win your fantasy football championship in the first couple weeks of a season, or you can't in the first couple rounds. There's really not an awful pick. Like, a lot of these guys are studs, but in baseball, when I see shoulder injuries and elbow injuries pop up, those guys are going early. Those are red flags for me. I'm not going to lose my league because I passed on Jonathan Taylor, but it's possible that you can lose your fantasy football league if you draft Jonathan Taylor or you draft a Josh Jacobs here early, late first, early second, and these guys are just not with you. I just don't think it's really worth it. I do prefer CMC over Chubb, but I'm a big Chubb guy. I think that he could flirt with 2,000 total yards this year. I think he's going to catch 40 balls. And if he does, he's going to be right there in that same tier, close to it with CMC. He's my RB3 overall. Todd Whitestone's in the house. We're going to break. We're going to talk some MLB stuff here with him. We're going to see the top waiver wire pickups. We'll dive back into the football in a little bit, guys. We still have some more football talk. We want to dive into the Seahawks. Going to take a look at round 11. There's a couple wide receivers I really want to bring to your attention. We got some MLB picks a little bit later on as well, but we'll dive into some of the trades that we've seen around the diamond. Trade deadline tomorrow in Major League Baseball at 6 p.m. Eastern, and we do want to get some waiver wire pickups as well from Mr. Whitestone. He's in here next. We'll be back in a couple. Hang tight.
At DraftKings Sportsbook, you can bet on nearly any sport imaginable. The NFL, the NBA, college football, college basketball, golf, the NHL, tennis, Major League Baseball, MMA, and more. Download the DK Sportsbook app on iOS and Android operating systems, as well as on your desktops or in mobile browsers. Get the best bonuses using promo code FTN. Remember, the only way to gamble responsibly is to win.
Stone, happy Monday, sir. Welcome in. Telstar 7 of FTN. We'll get you to unmute your mic. We'll get everybody to check out your article over at ftnfantasy.com. Always free, always glorious, always all kinds of goodness in it. Welcome in. Happy Monday. Hopefully you had a good weekend, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Meaney. How you doing today?
Yeah, we're doing all right. We're just a little over 24 hours away from the MLB trade deadline. The Halos are buyers. You said it last week that they would not sell Shohei Ohtani. They would keep him. We talked about the dysfunctional organization that they are, but they decided to keep him, and they decided to keep on buying. Since we've chatted, they've acquired Lucas Giolito, Ronaldo Lopez out of the pen. Late last night, they acquired Randall Gerchik, who is reunited with Mike Trout. These guys are taken back-to-back in the draft. Back in the day, it was actually Gerchik one spot ahead of Trout. CJ Cron also involved in that deal, who was drafted by the Halos. There were 4 players involved in that trade with the Rockies last night, and all 4 players drafted by the Angels. So Gerchik back, actually hadn't played any games with the Halos, but drafted with them, and then CJ Cron as well. Also, 2 big names going to Texas. Max Scherzer headlined to the Rangers, and Jordan Montgomery. Let's actually start with the Rangers.
Okay.
What'd you make of those 2 moves? And this is a team that's kind of starting to reel a little bit, right? Like, they've had some injuries, of course. DeGrom, he's been gone for quite some time.
Right.
But even like Nate Eovaldi, and when you and I chatted about a month ago, we looked at Nate. He was the top pitcher in fantasy baseball, number one. But we had said this guy has not really had a full season on the resume in quite some time, and of course he's dealing with an injury too. So is Texas done? Have they done enough? What do you make of the move so far?
I mean, I don't think they're done. I mean, I think they still got a good squad. They had to do this if they're going to compete. I am worried about Eovaldi. His velocity was down. They said it's a forearm issue. That's always worrying when they say it's a pitcher with a forearm issue. So I do think Scherzer can fill in admirably, and they're still in decent shape, but they really want to hold off the Astros because, the wild card is not guaranteed for the Western team. So I think that they needed to make the moves. I think they did the right thing. We said last week that we thought Texas was going to be a buyer, and I think they're following through on that. They see that their window is now, and they're going for it, which I appreciate.
Man, they've spent a lot of money over the past couple of years, and now you're right. Their window is now, and they are going for it. Do you think the Mets are going to continue to unload here? Like, is Verlander next up? Is he going to go?
I think so. I mean, I don't see if they're going to get rid of Scherzer. Why would they hold on to Verlander? He's not going to be an ace pitcher in 3 years, I don't think. So I would say if they can get a good haul, they would do it. They don't have to do it by the trade deadline, but people need pitching. Teams need pitching. So I would say odds are with them that they're going to move them. Yep.
According to DraftKings, he's favored just to be or still with the team. Like Justin Verlander throws first regular season pitch for after August 1st. Mets favored at plus 110. The Dodgers at plus 250. Back to the Astros at 6-1, and then the Reds there at 9-1. Other pitchers that DraftKings has as some future MLB trade deadline props: Eduardo Rodriguez, who's favored to go to Baltimore; Josh Hader, who's favored to go to the Astros, but minus 400 to stick with the Padres, and minus 700 for Blake Snell to stick with the Padres. The Orioles at 11-1. I want to transition into the Orioles, and George, can you throw the World Series odds up for us via DraftKings? The Braves up at the top here at plus 330. And I know you and I have been like Team Braves since the start of the season. That's my first conversation with you. I remember talking to you about how Atlanta was the team to beat in this division, not the Mets. The Mets tried acquire all these superstars that are aging, and now they all went out of town. Like if I was the organization and I know they want some pieces in return, I'd say, Verlander and Scherzer, why don't you just shut the heck up? You sign contracts here. You sign on the dotted line. You're staying here. You can't just get yourself out and have a chance to win a World Series. But I digress.
Right.
But the Orioles on that list and way down, like buried, not a team that's sitting first place in the American League East at 64-41. Like, this is a team where you can get some decent, like 12-1 is decent, right? Considering
I think that's
their
good,
record and how good they played here. John Schmaltz said last night he's watched them 10 straight games, thinks they're legitimate World Series contenders. Do you?
Right. I do. I do think the Orioles have a chance. I do think they need a pitcher to do that. I expect them to add somebody. I expect Houston to add somebody. Sort of a dark horse team, Chris, that you might consider is Philadelphia, because their schedule is really easy over the next few weeks. So they could make a little bit of a run, get up near one of the upper wild cards, and certainly be in good shape. They have, if Nola and Wheeler are pitching well, that gives them a good chance to win a series. So I would say don't rule them out. But Baltimore, I do think if they can get the right kind of pitching, I would say that they have a real shot as well. Yes.
That's what I have concerns about. Their pitching, like, it's been good, but how good is their rotation? The bullpen's been great, but some of these guys are going to start to hit career highs in terms of innings. Like, I think they definitely need an arm, and I don't know if like Eduardo Rodriguez is like that guy. Like, it'd be great to have in the rotation, but who else is left that they could, like, if they got a Verlander, would that be enough for you to say, all right, like, this is the team? They got a front end rotation guy who's experienced and could eat up some innings for them down the stretch. Like, would that be enough for you to say, like, this is actually the team that can compete with the Astros?
I think that would give them a good chance to get to the ALCS, but I don't think that Verlander alone is going to do that. I mean, maybe they look at it, Chris, like they're buying time because Tyler Wells, he looks gassed. He's down in Double-A now. Kramer looks like, he was good for a while, but he's not pitching well. So they kind of need two guys. So maybe they should do that ahead of just, ponying up some big haul for one guy. But the hitting and the defense is good. So I would say that they should go for it. And there maybe a guy like Stroman, who won't be that expensive, would be a good fit in Baltimore. It's kind of a pitcher's park now, and he would maybe thrive in that role.
And you and I chatted last week about Stroman. I think he's one of the most underrated pitchers in the game. I really do.
Yeah.
People don't love him in fantasy because he doesn't strike anybody out. But
Right.
I mean, the walks are clean. He keeps the ball on the ground. Isn't getting into a lot of trouble. What do you make of the Angels making these moves? We're just going to laugh at them in a couple months. Like, do you think they've done enough? Are they not? Because they're not even on that board. But they're 125-1 to win the World Series. They're 7-1 to squeak into the playoffs. And I don't know if they're done. I think they might even add another arm or two.
I mean, what you have to respect, Chris, is, they didn't just bounce around in the middle. They didn't say, we're not trading Ohtani and we're going to not do much else at all. They really jumped on one side of the tracks and went for it. So I respect that. I still think they'd be better off as a franchise if they had traded Ohtani before the deadline. But still, I think they're doing a good thing. Whether they're a real contender for the World Series, I'm not quite there. But I do think if they can just, get on a hot streak. I mean, I'm not a huge fan of CJ Cron. They needed a first baseman, but he's never hit well away from Coors Field. So I don't expect him to do a lot, but at least they're trying. At least maybe they think, well, if Ohtani sees us trying, he's going to say, even if we don't win, I'll sign up for next year.
I kind of see that too. I feel like he's thinking he's never said that he wants to leave. He says he wants to win, and the organization has shown him over the past couple of years, believe it or not, that they want to win. They've shown it when they've had a couple injuries where they got a Moustakas and an Escobar. It's like not earth-shattering moves, but just trying to replace some of the depth, right? And then doing it again here with Grichuk, with Taylor Ward, with the facial fractures, and he's going to be out for several weeks. I think Grichuk is a decent little ad. I mean, he's having a good season. Of course, both of these guys play at Coors, but his average has been better away from Coors, and he's been hitting lefties pretty well. But it is a small sample size, and it's RIP for my guy Trey Cabbage. I guess he's not going to play at first base anymore. Okay, one more time. It's all over for him. I like you mentioned the Red Sox down here. George's going to roll his eyes, but 50-1 for the Red Sox.
Right.
The D-backs, I don't fully believe in, but my goodness, like they played some good ball here at 50-1. The Reds we gave at 70-1 like weeks ago, so we can that's not going to happen, but we can just have some fun with that one and just get out right out. I like your call here on the Phillies because they got a couple nice arms at the top. Like you mentioned, the lineup is good. Bryce Harper, if he can hit a stride here in the second half of the season, they do have some offense. Schwarber seems to hit a home run or just strike out, but if he can make some more contact, they got some guys here. And you mentioned the schedule is pretty easy. So I like that. Talk to me about, from a fantasy baseball standpoint here today, who are some of the big waiver wire pickups that you have in your article?
Okay, so the main thing that was happening this weekend, Chris, was closer speculation. So there were three guys, Brooks Raley for the Mets, since Robertson's gone, Carlos Hernandez for the Royals, since maybe Barlow will be traded, and then Gregory Santos in Chicago White Sox. He could fill the role that's sort of up in the air right now. Graveman was filling it temporarily. So those three guys were the hot pickups, people trying to get ahead of the situation and get some saves. The other guy was Michael Toglia, who's filling behind CJ Cron. He plays first base and outfield, and he should get a good run. And hitting in Coors Field is always a plus. So those are the main guys that were pickups this weekend, I think.
Yeah, Ozuna's the most added player in Yahoo because he went on a tear this past weekend. He had 4 home runs in the series against Milwaukee. I mean, he's got 22 bombs in the season, but he's only hitting 236. Grichuk was the second most added, but I looked last night before the trade, and I think it was just he's back. He's at Coors. Like there were some games in Colorado, and he was on a little bit of a groove. So, I mean, I don't think he's going to have an everyday. When Trout comes back, I think him and Mickey Moniak will just platoon. That's what I think, but we'll see what happens. Right. We got Nootbaar in there as well as Gary Sanchez. do you feel like the Padres will trade? Like, there's a report over the weekend that they're willing to trade all these, hey, phone lines are open. We'll trade absolutely anybody on our roster, but I don't know if I believe that, Todd.
No, I don't think. I think the key here, Chris, is that AJ Preller, I think, is the GM, and the ownership doesn't really want to trade. They want to compete. That's why he made all those moves last year. And I just don't think they want to tear it down and try to build it up again. So I think that's the big thing, is that you got to look at what ownership wants to do. And I don't think they want to go back down to the brass tacks there. So I would not expect them to make any major trades. Maybe they move Snell or one guy, but I don't think that they're trying to just get minor leaguers back and try to build it back up.
Yeah. They've been an interesting franchise over the past couple of years, and they're willing to spend, and they're willing to be aggressive. Anything else, Todd, before we get you out of here? I want people to check out your article over at ftmfantasy.com.
Tuesday at 6:00 Eastern time is the deadline. So expect a few surprises, but I would say there'll be some teams that inexplicably do nothing. And that's always a surprise to me also. Like my Yankees, I'm hoping they do something, but them and Tampa Bay, I expect to be active. They haven't done anything yet. So let's wait and see what happens. Some teams could swoop in at the last minute, but it's always a surprise to me when teams that really need help end up doing zero.
Yeah, zero bats for sure. Like the Red Sox, right, George? Is that what you're thinking? The Red Sox, they got all this money to spend. What are they doing? Are they going to go get an arm? Because I don't like their rotation. I know that they got Sale coming back soon or Tanner coming back soon, but I don't know, man. I don't know if I'm really feeling it. George, do you have the Beatles juice? Like, can we get a live look of what Trout's going to look like by himself next year in Anaheim?
What are you doing? What are you doing?
Nothing. Me? Just hanging around.
Fighting?
It's an inside joke on the show, Todd, but that's going to be Trout next year hanging around. It's like that. Right. It's like that photo. Have you seen Will Smith on Fresh Prince?
Oh, yeah,
by himself, nobody else around him.
Yeah, looking around.
Trout
where is everybody?
In Anaheim, or maybe he's playing postseason ball. How cool would that be, though, to see Trout?
That would be nice. That would be nice. Yeah,
let's root for it. He deserves it. Todd, you're fantastic. We'll chop it up next week when we get some trades. Maybe we'll get a couple more trades and what it means from a fantasy baseball standpoint. If like these players are going to see a bit of a spike or a bit of a decline with their new. Hopefully, we see some madness. I'd like to see it. Pinstripes or no pinstripes. I'd like to see some trades happen here over the next little bit. Appreciate you, Todd. Telstar7 on the Twitter machine. We're going to dive back into the football talk in the show. And we do have a couple props, MLB props we'll get into towards the end of the show. So we'll be back in a couple. Hang tight.
Play So Rare MLB, a free revolutionary fantasy game and marketplace that transforms fans into general managers. Build your team with ownable digital player cards. Collect, buy, sell, and trade to optimize your lineup. Compete against So Rare managers from around the world. Climb leaderboards and advance to elite competitions. Based on your player's performance on the field, win rewards like game tickets, merch, and much more. Draft your set of free cards now at sorare.com/MLB.
The future of fantasy sports is here with So Rare. Build your teams just like an owner. Buy, sell, or trade officially licensed digital player cards. Build your 5-player weekly lineup, and you could win rewards like tickets, autographed jerseys, and more. The future of fantasy sports is here with So Rare, taking Dynasty to the next level.
Let's talk about the Seattle Seahawks here just for a little bit. So they're both of their star running backs are in the news. George, let's start actually with their team preview. If you have their team preview with some of their odds, okay, that's fine. We'll leave that one up there. Whatever you want. 8.5 win total here. Plus 240 to win the West, NFC West. They're 16-1 to win the conference. They're 40-1 to win the Super Bowl. I actually like this team quite a bit. You know, they had a win total at 5.5 last year. They cruised past that. They found a way to get into the playoffs, and they kind of hung around a little bit with the 49ers in that playoff game. Now, Geno Smith had a great season. He struggled down the stretch of the season, but he did play some elite defenses. The Niners, one of those defenses, the Jets, another one of those defenses. He's going as quarterback 15 on average. According to Underdog Fantasy, we have free tools over at ftnfantasy.com, updated ADPs at Sleeper, at Underdog Fantasy, so you can kind of get a feel of where these guys are going. But Geno Smith, I've talked a lot about him before already, but since we're on him, he is one of my favorite quarterbacks to draft in Superflex leagues. We're talking about quarterbacks that you can get as your second quarterback, a quarterback that you can get maybe towards the end of, I mean, you could in a 10 team for sure, and a 12 team with only one starting quarterback position. You can take Geno Smith with your last pick if you wanted to. He was a top 10 quarterback last year in fantasy. He was quarterback 8 in fantasy points per game. If you take away like Kyler and Lamar, who were hovering around 11, 12 games, he was borderline top 5 fantasy quarterback last season. He led the NFL in completion percentage. Now, I don't feel like he's going to have the same type of season. This is a guy that was drafted, I think, in like 2012, 2014. Like it was his first year as a starting quarterback in like 10 years, and he got his first Pro Bowl nod. It was a special campaign for Geno Smith, but the fact that this offense really didn't miss a beat without Russ, like it kind of improved. We saw Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf finish as borderline wide receiver ones. Tyler Lockett has finished ahead of DK Metcalf in fantasy points per game in each of the last 2 seasons. We have DK Metcalf going as wide receiver 15. We have Tyler Lockett going as wide receiver 34, and Jackson Smith-Njigba as wide receiver 32. I have no idea why the fantasy community is fading Tyler Lockett again. I like JSN. I think he's going to be a fantastic wide receiver in the NFL. Maybe not a wide receiver 3 this season. I still think he's 3rd on this team in terms of targets. Dynasty, rookie only drafts, he should be the first wide receiver taken off the board. I fully believe that. Tyler Lockett there's an out in his contract after this year. He may not be a member of Seattle, but he's still a terrific route runner. We love Geno Smith's deep ball. Do we have that, George, from some statistics that you had? Like, these are the deep passing TD leaders from last year. We're talking like 20 plus yards down the field. Jalen Hurts, 1. Derek Carr tied for 1. And then Geno right there at 10. So even if he steps back a touch, I think this team is good defensively. Bobby Wagner is back. They arguably got the best cornerback in the draft, along with the wide receiver and Devin Witherspoon. I know he needs a new contract. They're going to find a way to get him on the field. So I think this defense has improved, maybe more possessions for them. And Geno has got like a sneaky little rushing floor. I know there's not a lot of design runs in his game, but he does have a sneaking rushing floor. As for the running backs, I've already been out on Kenneth Walker. Now he's going to fall down draft boards a little bit. Word out of Seattle is that he's week to week with a groin injury. Kenneth Walker is very boom or bust. I got some boom stats. I got some bust stats. Here's some boom. 11th in carries, 3rd in red zone touches, 13th in opportunity share. That's all positive. That's great stuff. 4th in explosive run rate. Fantastic. 9 TDs, 1,000 yards. Only started 11 games. He had 1,000 yards, only 200 carries, which is great. Here's the negative stuff. Ranked 1st in percentage of his yards from explosive runs. His success rate, super low, 41st out of 42 qualified backs with 100 carries. Middle of the pack in terms of rush EPA per carry. He was 2 for 9 in carries inside the 5. So yes, it was great to see him have some explosive runs that, you know, could turn into 60-yard runs, take it to the house, but you can't bank on that stuff all the time. It's great they happen, but this is a guy that didn't really show me that he could, you know, hit a hole, could get those short yardage, you know, first, like when it's 3rd and 4, like can you count on him? He's not running any routes. He's not a guy that was targeted. And if you're not running routes, you're not going to get targeted. And Seattle just drafted a running back in the 2nd round, a year after they drafted Kenneth Walker in the 2nd round. This is a team that wants to run the ball for sure with Pete Carroll. But I have some concerns that Walker could not only lose first and second down touches, this could be a straight on 50-50 committee when they're both healthy and ready to go. And now the fact that both of these guys are nicked up and hurt, we could even see them bring in a veteran back. Maybe, I don't know if it's Zeke, I don't know if it's Hunt or Fournette, but they could bring somebody in and it could just be even more cloudy and muddy. So I'm out. I'm not spending a third round pick on a running back that could be in a timeshare, that could lose goal line work, and is not going to get any work in the passing game. So I'm completely out. I love Metcalf where he's going. I'm a Tyler Lockett fan. I like where he's going as well. I'm out in redraft on JSN. No dice on Fant in a underdog fantasy. Is a Seattle stack is one that you could really get. You could take him toward your last pick as just your third tight end potentially, but I don't see a lot of volume there. And I kind of be out on Charbonnet. I think there's more concern about the shoulder injury right now. As a rookie running back, got to learn the playbook on a new team. He's going to be away out indefinitely. I think that does hurt him. I know you say, well, if it hurts him, it helps Walker. I just don't think I want anybody on that backfield. I like the wideouts, the two alphas, and I like Geno. And I like Seattle actually as a dark horse. I think you'll get some better odds now with these injuries. I like them as a dark horse to win the division. I got them for 9 wins. They wrap up against Arizona. They play Arizona twice. They got the Rams twice. They got Carolina. They got the Giants. They got Washington. This is a team that I think will be right around that 9-win total from last year, but I think that they will flirt and they'll battle with the Niners for the NFC West. I am a big believer on that. And I know one guy, Emery Hunt, is as well. I'm going to save the Seattle talk because he's going to join me in a few days and we're going to really talk about the Seahawks. I know he's high on them as well. Improved defense and an underrated offense and a very winnable conference for sure. Top heavy conference as well. We'll be back. We're going to take a look at round 11. There's one wide receiver in particular I want to give some love to. He's from the Texans. We'll talk about him next here on Mean Streets.
The future of fantasy sports is here with So Rare. Build your teams just like an owner. Buy, sell, or trade officially licensed digital player cards. Build your 5-player weekly lineup, and you could win rewards like tickets, autographed jerseys, and more. The future of fantasy sports is here with So Rare, taking Dynasty to the next level. The future of fantasy sports is here with So Rare. Build your teams just like an owner. Buy, sell, or trade officially licensed digital player cards. Build your 5-player weekly lineup, and you could win rewards like tickets, autographed jerseys, and more. The future of fantasy sports is here with So Rare, taking Dynasty to the next level.
Round 11 NFFC high stakes leagues data here from the last 2 weeks. A pretty good sample size, well over 100 drafts and people putting their hard-earned bucks on the line. So let's take a look at some of these players that are going here on average. Up at the top, Jacoby Myers, now a member of the Raiders, going to play in the slot. I mean, him and Devontae Adams, both great slot wide receivers. Been on the slot. Outside, of course, you can line up Devontae Adams all over the field, mismatched completely. But Myers is going to be pretty comfortable and familiar with the Josh McDaniels system. He loves his Patriots. My goodness. Romeo Doubs in there. Anthony Richardson, Jared Goff. Keep in mind, high stakes here. It's a 6-point passing touchdown league. So some of these quarterbacks going a touch early. We were in last year on the price for Goff. It's just a little bit too early for me. Last year we were getting him as quarterback 23, 24. He's that perfect super flex guy. Nico Collins, Elijah Mitchell, Tyler Algier, Alan Lazard, Russell Wilson, Chig Okonkwo. I love you guys have heard me talk about Okonkwo so many times. But first in among tight ends and yards per route run and yards after the catch, yards per catch, and he doesn't block. He's going to be on the field. All the attention go to Hopkins. I think, Chig, I don't think his value hurts. So they got Hopkins in. I think, Treylon Burks gets a bit of a downtick. Tyler Boyd, I like Greg Dulcich as well. On this list, I like Dulcich, I like Okonkwo, I like Lazard. I like Richardson, and then I like Nico Collins. Nico Collins' last 4 games last year, remember when Brandon Cooks left, he racked up 36 targets over those last 4 games, 36 targets. He had 2 games with 10 targets, one with 9. Problem is he only caught 19 of those passes because he was catching passes from Davis Mills. This is, believe it or not, CJ Stroud is a very accurate quarterback. I think he's going to do some great things in his first year in the NFL. I'm a big fan of Nico Collins, where he's going in drafts. I like John Mechie. I like Tank Dell. And Robert Woods is an immediate pass for me. He's going to be on the field a lot, but I'm not interested. Dalton Schultz, Mechie, Tank Dell, and Nico Collins, all very cheap. It's a cheap Texan stack, and those are guys that I really get. Zach Moss out for 6 weeks. And he's a member of the Colts too. What are the Colts going to do? They just got to figure it out with Jonathan Taylor. My goodness. We got a break. We got one MLB pick to wrap up the show, but Nico Collins and John Mechie. I saw a video today of John Mechie on the field. It's great, man. Really rooting for the guy. Those are 2 of my favorite late round targets, Nico Collins, and then a little bit later on is John Mechie. And Tim Patrick just broke his leg. Daily Handle, you're killing me with all this news. We'll be back here in a couple. Oh, my goodness. Tim Patrick, he suffered a season-ending injury before the season got underway last year, and another one from him. That's a rough go for Patrick. We got a couple MLB picks to wrap up the show. We'll be back in a couple. Hang tight.
Play So Rare MLB, a free revolutionary fantasy game and marketplace that transforms fans into general managers. Build your team with ownable digital player cards. Collect, buy, sell, and trade to optimize your lineup. Compete against So Rare managers from around the world. Climb leaderboards and advance to elite competitions. Based on your player's performance on the field, win rewards like game tickets, merch, and much more. Draft your set of free cards now at sorare.com/MLB. Play So Rare MLB, a free revolutionary fantasy game and marketplace that transforms fans into general managers. Build your team with ownable digital player cards. Collect, buy, sell, and trade to optimize your lineup. Compete against So Rare managers from around the world. Climb leaderboards and advance to elite competitions. Based on your player's performance on the field, win rewards like game tickets, merch, and much more. Draft your set of free cards now at sorare.com/MLB.
All right, couple picks here for you. Actually, going to start with the Astros. We do have a pitching prop here for you, but I like the Padres on the run line. I like the Astros on the run line. I like Houston to score 5 runs as well. Noah Syndergaard's going to make his Cleveland Guardians debut here today. He checks in with a career high 82% contact rate. He's striking out 6 batters per 9. He's allowed 12 bombs and 12 starts, 5+ runs in 3 straight outings. His first start happens to come against the Astros, who are fully healthy now and are feeling it at the moment. Good luck, Noah. My strikeout prop here is Andrew Abbott over 5.5 strikeouts, -122 over at FanDuel. I take this as high as -140. Use the prop shop, get the best possible odds that you can get. He's been brilliant through 10 starts. The rookie has a 1.90 ERA over 61 and 2/3 innings. He's racked up 66 strikeouts, which is 9.63 K per nine. He's allowed 1 or 0 runs in 7 of his 10 starts this season. A matchup against the Cubs. They're in the middle of the pack in OPS and WOBA against lefties, but they are striking out more against left-handed pitching than right-handed pitching. Overall, they have the 13th highest strikeout in baseball at 23%, but just a touch over 24% against southpaws. So give me Abbott over 5.5 strikeouts at -122 over at FanDuel. Good luck around the diamond. We'll talk to you tomorrow. Cheers.